The night air was cool inside the great citadel of Draconis Prime. The black stone walls seemed to hum with quiet power, and torchlight flickered across polished marble floors. In those endless halls moved a young human maid named Lily Carter. She carried a silver tray in her hands, careful not to make a sound as she passed the guards standing along the walls. Lily had been working in the palace for almost 2 years. She was quiet, small, and often went unnoticed by the grand nobles and dragonkin who ruled this place. Her work was simple, cleaning, serving meals, and making sure everything stayed in perfect order. But what no one saw were the bruises that marked her arms and back, hidden under the long sleeves of her maid's uniform. The guards were not kind to humans. They saw her as weak, a servant who should be thankful just to breathe the same air as dragons. Some mocked her, others pushed her when no one was looking. The worst of them enjoyed leaving marks where they thought no one would notice. Lily never complained. She knew that in a palace ruled by dragons, a human's pain meant little. But Lily worked hard anyway. She believed that if she stayed quiet, if she did her job well, maybe she could survive this place until she earned enough to return home to Earth Colony 7. Each day she kept her eyes down and her hands busy. Each night she prayed the pain would fade. Emperor Kaeldar ruled from high above, in chambers made of dark crystal and gold. He was not like the younger dragons who filled his court with arrogance and noise. He was ancient, calm, and proud, a being who had seen centuries pass. In his humanoid form, he looked like a tall man with eyes that shimmered like molten gold. His presence alone made even seasoned warriors bow their heads. Lily had seen him only a few times before. He never spoke to her directly. To him, she was just another servant among hundreds. That night, however, their paths crossed in a way neither could forget. The Emperor's private dining hall was silent except for the soft sound of Lily's footsteps. She carried a tray of tea, her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. The heavy doors opened with a groan, and she stepped inside. Kaeldar sat at a long table, studying a map spread before him. His golden eyes lifted briefly when she entered. "Leave it there," he said, his deep voice calm and distant. Lily nodded and placed the tray near his hand. Her fingers brushed the edge of a cup, and hot tea spilled over the rim. She gasped quietly and tried to clean it with her sleeve. In her rush, the fabric slid up, revealing the dark, uneven marks on her pale skin. Kaeldar's eyes narrowed. For a moment he said nothing. Then his gaze moved from her arm to her face. "What happened to you?" he asked. Lily froze. Her heart pounded. I fell, my lord," she whispered quickly, lowering her head. "It was clumsy of me." The Emperor leaned back in his chair, studying her closely. His senses were sharp, far beyond human understanding. He could hear the small tremor in her voice, smell the faint trace of fear. Dragons were not easily deceived. Still, he did not push her. "Be more careful," he said finally, though his tone carried a strange weight. "You may go." Lily bowed deeply and hurried out of the room. The doors closed behind her with a heavy thud. She exhaled a shaky breath, clutching her arm. She had been lucky. If anyone knew what truly happened, she feared the guards would make her pay for it later. Kaeldar sat in silence long after she left. His sharp mind replayed the scene over and over. The bruises were too dark, too even. They were not from a fall. They were from hands, cruel hands. His claws flexed slightly against the table. He had ruled countless realms and fought many wars, but few things stirred his anger like the sight of cruelty toward the weak. He rose from his chair and walked to the tall window overlooking the city below. The night stretched endlessly, full of stars and the faint glow of human settlements beyond the mountain ridge. His people had taken humans into their world centuries ago, promising peace. Yet even now, he saw how easily that promise was broken by those who saw power as a right to harm. The thought unsettled him more than he cared to admit. He had ignored the small things, the whispers, the tension among his guards, the fear in human eyes. Perhaps, he thought, he had grown too distant from those beneath him. As the moonlight touched his face, Kaeldar made a quiet decision. Tomorrow he would begin watching more closely. He would see what others tried to hide. If his guards had forgotten what honor meant, he would remind them. Far below, Lily walked through the servants' corridor, her steps slow and heavy. She passed the guards who smirked at her but said nothing. Inside, she felt something strange. Fear, yes, but also a faint flicker of hope. For the first time, someone had seen her pain. And though he was a dragon, his eyes had not looked away. In that silent moment, neither knew it, but the balance of the palace had already begun to shift. The morning light filtered through the high glass windows of the palace, casting long beams across the polished floors. The great citadel of Draconis Prime seemed peaceful, but Emperor Kael'thar's mind was far from calm. He sat in his throne chamber, surrounded by ministers and generals, yet his thoughts kept drifting back to the human maid from last night, the one with the bruises. He tried to dismiss it as a minor matter, but something inside him refused to let go. The marks on her arm had not looked accidental. They spoke of cruelty, of hands that struck without mercy. Kael'thar had ruled for centuries and seen countless wars, but the quiet suffering of a servant disturbed him in ways he did not expect. As the morning meeting ended, Kael'thar rose from his throne. His golden eyes scanned the room, sharp and commanding. "Captain Arlen," he said, addressing the tall dragonkin officer standing near the door. "Have the guards from the eastern corridor report to me at dusk." Captain Arlen bowed. "At once, my lord." The emperor turned and walked toward his private chambers. His footsteps echoed softly across the marble floor. Servants bowed deeply as he passed, careful not to meet his gaze. He noticed their fear, the way their shoulders tightened when guards walked by. It was not new, but today it felt heavier, more visible. In the lower halls, Lily Carter worked quietly, polishing the ornate silver trays used for royal dinners. Her arm ached from the night before, and the bruise had darkened to a deep purple. She kept her sleeve pulled down tight, praying no one would notice. Every sound of boots in the corridor made her heart race. If the guards who hurt her learned the emperor had seen the marks, they might come for her again. "Lily," a soft voice called. She turned to see her friend Mara, another human maid, peeking from behind a doorway. "You should rest," Mara whispered. "You look pale." "I can't," Lily replied quietly. "If I stop working, they'll notice. And I don't want trouble." Mara frowned but said nothing more. She knew the risk of arguing. Together they continued their chores, pretending the palace was safe, though both knew better. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Kael'thar sat once more in his chamber. The guards from the eastern corridor were brought before him, for dragonkin soldiers in dark armor. They bowed deeply, their wings tucked close in respect. "You serve in the maid's quarters?" the emperor asked, his tone even. "Yes, my lord," one of them answered. "We maintain order among the servants." "Order," Kael'thar repeated quietly. "And how do you maintain it?" The guards glanced at one another. "We ensure discipline, sire. Humans can be careless." A low growl rumbled deep in the emperor's chest, barely audible but enough to make them stiffen. He stood, walking slowly toward them. His gaze burned like molten fire. "I saw a human maid last night. Her name is Lily Carter. She was bruised. Do you know how she came to be harmed?" One of the guards shifted nervously. "She said she fell, my lord." Kael'thar stopped. "Did she fall? Or was she pushed?" Silence filled the room. None dared speak. The emperor's eyes glowed faintly, and the air grew heavier. "If I learn that one under my protection has been hurt by those sworn to serve me," he said slowly, "there will be consequences you cannot imagine." The guards bowed again, their voices trembling. "Yes, my lord." "Leave," Kael'thar ordered. When they were gone, the emperor stood alone in the quiet chamber. He looked out through the tall crystal windows at the vast city below. Dragons and humans lived together, but not as equals. He had promised peace long ago, yet in his own halls injustice festered. That night, he summoned his chief sentinel, an old dragon named Varys who had served him faithfully for centuries. "Watch the maid's quarters," Kael'thar said. "Do not interfere. Just observe." Report to me every word spoken between the guards and the humans. Varys bowed deeply. It shall be done, my emperor. Kaeldar nodded, his gaze distant. Something is rotten within these walls, old friend. I can feel it. I will not allow cruelty to grow under my rule. As the sentinel left, the emperor remained by the window, the moonlight shining against his scaled hand. He thought of the maid again, the fear in her eyes, the way she hid her pain. He did not yet understand why her suffering mattered so much to him, only that it did. Below, in the servants' quarters, Lily lay awake on her small cot, staring at the ceiling. The day had passed quietly, but her heart could not rest. Somewhere deep inside, she felt that something had changed, that someone, somewhere had begun to notice her pain. And for the first time in a long while, she dared to hope that things might not stay the same forever. The next few days in the citadel passed under a quiet tension. Nothing seemed out of place to the nobles or visiting traders, but the palace guards felt the air change. The emperor's sudden interest in the servants had unsettled them. Whispers spread through the corridors like cold wind. Lily Carter continued her work in silence. Her bruises were healing, though the ache still lingered. She kept her head down, avoiding eye contact with the guards who patrolled the halls. Every time she passed them, she felt their stares. They no longer spoke to her directly, but the cruel smirks on their faces said enough. They were waiting, watching. Captain Duran Holt, commander of the Eastern Corridor Guards, had noticed the shift as well. He was a tall dragonkin with dark red scales and a scar that ran across his jaw. He was known for being strict, but in truth, he ruled his men through fear more than respect. When word reached him that Emperor Kaeldar had questioned the guards about a human maid, his first reaction was anger. He sat in his private quarters, tail lashing behind him in agitation. That human should have kept quiet, he muttered. If the Emperor starts digging into this, it'll bring trouble to all of us. One of his lieutenants, a younger dragon named Reth, spoke cautiously. Perhaps it will pass, Captain. The Emperor is busy. He won't waste time on a maid. Duran's eyes narrowed. You don't understand him. Kaeldar sees everything. If he's asking questions, it means he already suspects something. He leaned closer. We can't let him find proof. No witnesses, no trail. Reth shifted uneasily. You mean? I mean make sure the humans stay quiet, Duran interrupted. Especially that maid. If she speaks again, we're finished. That night, the corridors felt darker than usual. The torches flickered weakly, and the silence was heavy. Lily and her friend Mara were returning from the kitchens, carrying empty baskets. They whispered softly, their voices low. Something's wrong, Mara said. The guards keep watching us. I think they know the Emperor asked about you. Lily's heart skipped a beat. I didn't tell him anything, she whispered quickly. He just noticed. I know, Mara replied, glancing around nervously. But they don't care. Be careful, Lily. Promise me. Lily nodded, though fear tightened her chest. She hurried back to her quarters, locking the small wooden door behind her. She sat on the edge of her cot, clutching the thin blanket around her shoulders. Every sound outside made her flinch. Above her, in the highest tower, Emperor Kaeldar stood before a massive crystal screen that displayed the palace corridors. The sentinel Varys had installed small observation orbs in the halls, enchanted devices that recorded everything they saw. Kaeldar watched as guards moved through the lower levels. His golden eyes followed Captain Duran's figure as he gave quiet orders to his men. See how they slither, Varys said from behind him. They think themselves untouchable. Kaeldar's jaw tightened. They mistake silence for blindness. He leaned closer to the glowing image. One of the guards had approached a servant near the kitchens, a young boy delivering linens. The guard spoke harshly, grabbing the boy's shoulder. Kaeldar could not hear the words, but the boy's frightened reaction was enough. Mark them, the Emperor said quietly. Every guard who threatens a human, mark their names. Varys nodded and began to record the list. What will you do when you have them all? Kaeldar's eyes flickered with cold light. I will remind them what it means to serve with honor. Later that night, Lily woke to a faint noise outside her door. She froze, listening. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Then a whisper. Lily Carter. The voice was low, male, and dangerous. We need to talk. Her heart raced. She didn't answer. The handle rattled once, twice, then stopped. After a few tense moments, the sound of retreating footsteps faded down the corridor. Lily sat there trembling, her breath shallow. She knew the guards were trying to scare her, to warn her into silence. But deep inside, something had changed. She was tired of being afraid. If the Emperor truly cared, maybe this was her chance to finally speak the truth. In the tower above, Kaeldar continued his silent watch. He saw the same guard passing by Lily's door, his expression cruel. The Emperor's claws pressed lightly against the edge of the crystal display, leaving faint scratches in the surface. Soon, he murmured, voice low and fierce. Soon, they will learn what fear truly means. Outside, the wind howled across the citadel, carrying with it the first signs of a coming storm. The citadel of Draconis Prime slept under a silver moon. The air was still, heavy with the quiet before a storm. Deep in the halls of polished obsidian, Emperor Kaeldar moved silently through the corridors. He wore no crown and carried no guard. In his human form, dressed in dark robes, he seemed like a shadow passing through his own palace. He had not told anyone where he was going. For days, he had watched the recordings from the sentinel orbs, watched the guards mock, threaten, and strike the servants. His patience had thinned to a single thread. Tonight, he would see the truth for himself. The hallways were dimly lit, the golden torches flickering against carved dragon motifs. The Emperor's sharp senses picked up every whisper and every heartbeat in the silence. From one of the side halls, he heard laughter, rough, drunken laughter. He followed the sound until he reached the servants' courtyard, hidden behind the lower kitchens. There, under the pale light, two guards leaned against a wall, drinking from a flask. Their armor was unfastened, their voices loud and cruel. Did you see her face when I grabbed her arm? One of them said, grinning. That human nearly dropped the whole tray. The other laughed harshly. She should be thankful we even let her live here. They're just humans. Soft, weak, always afraid. Kaeldar's eyes darkened. He stepped from the shadows, his voice calm but filled with power. And what gives you the right to harm those under my rule? The guards froze. One dropped the flask, the sound sharp against the stone. They turned and stared at him, pale and stammering. Emperor Kaeldar, one of them choked out, bowing clumsily. We didn't see you there, my lord. I imagine you did not, Kaeldar said softly, walking closer. Tell me, do you find strength in striking the helpless? And no, my lord, it was nothing serious. Just discipline, the taller guard said quickly. The humans forget their place sometimes. Kaeldar stopped a few steps away, his golden eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Their place, he repeated. And what place is that, soldier? The guard swallowed hard. To serve, my lord. To obey. And you? The emperor asked quietly. What is your place? The guard hesitated. To serve you, my emperor. Kaeldar's lips curved into something between sorrow and fury. Then perhaps you should remember that. Before the guards could react, the air around them shimmered. The emperor's disguise melted away, his true form rising like a living storm. His wings spread wide, brushing the courtyard walls, his scales reflecting the firelight. The two guards stumbled backward, their eyes wide with terror. Kaeldar's voice thundered through the courtyard. You have broken the law of my reign. You have stained this house with cruelty. Did you think I would not see? The guards dropped to their knees. Mercy, my lord. We were only following orders. Whose orders? Kaeldar demanded. They hesitated, glancing at each other in panic. Captain Holt, my lord, one whispered finally. He told us to keep the humans in line. Kaeldar's wings folded slowly behind him. The fury in his gaze burned hotter than fire, but his voice was calm. Then your captain will answer for this. As for you, go now to the prison chambers. Surrender yourselves to the warden. If you run, you will not see another sunrise." The guards fled in terror, their armor clattering as they disappeared into the darkness. The courtyard fell silent again. Kaeldar remained still for a long moment. The anger inside him pulsed like molten metal, but beneath it was something else. A sharp, cold disappointment. He had trusted his soldiers to protect his people, not to abuse them. He turned toward the servant wing. The halls were quiet, save for the soft rustle of movement. Near one doorway he saw a flicker of light. Lily Carter stood there, holding a small lantern, her eyes wide. She had seen everything. She froze as his gaze met hers. For a moment, she looked ready to run. "It's all right," Kaeldar said gently. His voice was no longer thunder. It was calm and low, almost human again. "You are safe, Lily." She hesitated, clutching the lantern. "You saw them," she whispered. "You know what they've done." He nodded slowly. "I know, and it will end." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, my lord." Kaeldar looked at her for a moment longer, then turned away. "Rest now," he said. "You need not hide anymore." As he walked back through the halls, the torches flared brighter, their flames reacting to his power. Above the citadel, thunder rolled in the clouds. The storm that had been waiting had finally begun. The storm broke over Draconis Prime the following night. Rain fell in heavy sheets against the black stone towers, and lightning flashed across the dark sky. Inside the citadel, the air was tense. Servants moved quickly and quietly, avoiding the main halls where the Emperor's fury was about to unfold. Emperor Kaeldar stood in the Grand Hall of Judgment. The space was vast, with tall pillars carved from obsidian and gold. Flames burned in great braziers along the walls, their light reflecting off the marble floor. At the center, two guards, the ones who had confessed the night before, knelt trembling, their armor stripped away. Around them stood nobles, soldiers, and attendants, all summoned by royal command. At the top of the steps sat Kaeldar, not in his dragon form but as a tall man cloaked in dark robes. His golden eyes glowed with restrained fire. His voice echoed through the hall when he spoke. "You were sworn to protect this palace," he said, his tone cold and clear. "Yet you used that duty to harm those who could not defend themselves." Neither of the guards spoke. One tried to raise his head but could not meet the Emperor's gaze. Kaeldar's words carried through the silence. "You say you followed orders. Then your captain shares your guilt. Bring Captain Holt before me." The great doors opened, and Captain Duran Holt was led in by two sentinels. His wrists were bound in iron cuffs, though his wings were left free. He walked proudly, his chin high, though his eyes betrayed unease. "Captain Holt," Kaeldar said, "you stand accused of ordering the abuse of human servants within my palace. Do you deny it?" Holt's jaw tightened. "My lord, discipline is necessary. Humans forget their place. I only sought to maintain order." Kaeldar rose from his throne, descending the marble steps with slow, deliberate grace. "Order built on fear is not order, it is rot. You call yourself a soldier, yet you strike those who cannot strike back." Holt glared at him, pride warring with fear. "They are not like us. They are fragile, weak. You would risk your empire's strength over a few bruised servants." The Emperor stopped before him, his eyes burning like the heart of a star. "You mistake compassion for weakness, Captain, and you mistake me for a ruler who will tolerate cruelty." The air around them grew hot, the braziers flaring brighter. The nobles whispered in alarm. Kaeldar spread his hands, and a sudden gust of power swept through the hall. Fire curled along the walls, rising into swirling patterns of gold and crimson. "By the ancient laws of Draconis," Kaeldar declared, his voice thundering, "those who break the code of honor shall face judgment by flame." Holt's eyes widened. "My lord, please." But the Emperor raised his hand, and a ring of fire encircled the captain and his men. The flames did not burn their flesh, but the heat was unbearable. They fell to their knees, gasping. "This is not death," Kaeldar said, his voice calm once more. "This is memory." Let the fire mark you, not as scars, but as lessons. You will be stripped of your rank, your armor, and your honor. You will leave this city by sunrise. Should you ever return, your punishment will be final. The flames rose high, then vanished, leaving the guards trembling and pale. The smell of smoke lingered in the air. Kael'thar turned away from them, his expression unreadable. Remove them from my sight. As the sentinels dragged the disgraced soldiers from the hall, the nobles watched in silence. None dared speak. They had seen the emperor's power before, but never his wrath so clearly controlled. When the hall emptied, Kael'thar stood alone before the great window overlooking the storm. His reflection stared back at him, a ruler who had finally acted, yet found no peace in justice. Behind him, the door opened softly. Lily Carter stepped in, hesitant but brave. She carried a small lantern, its light gentle against the dark room. "My lord," she said softly, "I heard what happened." Kael'thar did not turn. "It is done. They will harm no one again." "You did what no one else would," Lily said. "Thank you." He looked at her then, his gaze gentler than before. "Do not thank me. I should have seen it sooner." Lily shook her head. "You saw it when it mattered." Outside, the storm began to fade. The thunder rolled away into the distance, leaving the faint glow of dawn on the horizon. Kael'thar stood in silence, listening to the quiet after the storm. In that calm, he made a silent promise, that this would not be the end of his justice, but the beginning of something greater. The following day dawned calm and golden. The storm had washed the air clean, and the towers of Draconis Prime shone like polished glass in the sunlight. But inside the citadel, a different kind of stillness filled the halls, one of unease and expectation. Word of the emperor's judgment had spread quickly. Every servant, every soldier, even the nobles whispered about what had happened in the grand hall. Lily Carter moved carefully through the corridors, her hands clasped before her. Wherever she went, the guards stepped aside. Some looked away, ashamed. Others watched her with quiet curiosity. It was strange to her how one moment of truth had changed everything. For the first time, no one dared to touch or threaten her. In the heart of the palace, Emperor Kael'thar sat in his private council chamber. Sunlight filtered through the crystal ceiling, scattering golden light across the room. Before him stood his advisors and a few chosen nobles. On the far side of the chamber, Lily waited, unsure why she had been summoned. Kael'thar's gaze softened when he saw her. "Lily Carter," he said, his deep voice calm but serious. "Yesterday, I passed judgment on those who hurt you and others like you. But punishment alone does not heal wounds. I want to hear the truth from you." Lily hesitated, her heart pounding. All eyes were on her. She wanted to run, but she knew this was her chance. Taking a slow breath, she stepped forward. "My lord," she began quietly, "I came here from the human colonies 2 years ago. I thought serving in the palace would be an honor. But from the first day, things were hard. The guards called us names. They pushed us. They said humans were lucky to be alive under dragon rule." Her voice trembled, but she kept going. "We worked long hours. If we made mistakes, they hit us. Some of us got sick, but no one cared. We were too afraid to speak." The chamber was silent. Even the nobles, who had once looked down on humans, seemed uneasy now. Lily lowered her head. "I didn't want trouble. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would stop. But it only got worse." Her voice broke slightly. "The night you saw me, I'd been punished for spilling a drink that someone else knocked over. I didn't tell you the truth then because I thought they'd hurt me again." Kael'thar listened closely. His expression was calm, but there was sorrow in his eyes. When she finished, he said softly, "You have been braver than many warriors I have known." Lily blinked in surprise. "I was only trying to survive." "Survival," he said, "is not weakness. It is the first form of strength." He turned his gaze to the nobles. "You see now the price of arrogance. You see what your silence has allowed. If this empire is to stand, it must be built on justice, not fear." A few of the nobles nodded, shame written across their faces. One older dragon, Lord Vareth, stepped forward. "My emperor," he said humbly, "we have turned our eyes away for too long. Perhaps it is time the humans were treated not as servants, but as part of our realm." Kaeldar inclined his head. "That time begins now." He turned back to Lily. "You have spoken the truth, and I will not let it fade. From this day, the human workers will have representation in the royal court. You will be the first voice among them. You will speak for those who cannot." Lily's eyes widened. "Me? My lord, I don't know how." "You will learn," Kaeldar said with a faint smile. "Courage cannot be taught, but you already have it." Tears welled in her eyes, but she bowed deeply. "Thank you, my emperor. I won't fail you." "You have already succeeded," he said gently. As the meeting ended, the nobles left quietly, each deep in thought. Lily lingered for a moment, standing by the great window. Outside, the city stretched beneath her, full of life, humans and dragons moving side by side. For the first time, she saw hope there. Kaeldar watched her silently. In her small frame, he saw something greater than all his power, a spark of humanity that even dragons could not extinguish. He knew then that his empire was changing, and it began not with his command, but with one human's courage to be seen. As Lily left the chamber, sunlight followed her, casting a soft glow around her figure. The emperor stood alone, but he felt lighter than he had in years. For the first time, he believed that peace between dragons and humans was not just possible, it was beginning. Weeks passed, and the city of Draconis Prime began to change. What had started as a moment of justice in the Grand Hall grew into something much larger. The humans who once walked with their heads bowed now dared to look up. The dragons who once ignored them began to see them not as lesser beings but as allies. It was a slow change, but it was real. In the palace, Lily Carter worked tirelessly beside the Emperor's new council. She had been given a place at the long obsidian table where decisions about trade, law, and governance were made. At first, her presence had drawn stares. Some nobles whispered that a human had no right to sit among dragons. But over time, even the loudest critics grew silent when they saw her wisdom and quiet strength. One morning, Kaeldar entered the council chamber to find Lily already there, reading reports. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her expression was focused. He paused at the doorway, watching her for a moment. There was pride in his gaze, though he said nothing. "Good morning, my lord." Lily greeted him, standing politely. "Good morning, Lady Carter," he replied with a small smile. "You were here before the sun again." "There's much to do," she said simply. "If we are to make the reforms real, we can't rest yet." Kaeldar nodded. "You remind me of someone I once knew, a warrior who never stopped until his people were safe." Lily smiled faintly. "And did he succeed?" The Emperor looked out the window toward the sprawling city below. "Not at first, but his people learned from his mistakes, and that was enough." Later that day, the two of them toured the lower districts of the city. Wherever they went, people gathered to watch. Human workers bowed respectfully, but not in fear. Dragon merchants greeted Lily with respect, offering her goods and gifts. The market was alive with voices, different languages, laughter, and hope. Kaeldar stopped near a fountain where children, both human and dragonborn, played together. The sight brought a rare smile to his face. "Do you see that?" he asked softly. "That is what we fight for." Lily nodded. "It's beautiful." That evening, the Emperor hosted a feast to celebrate the first successful agreement between human and dragon trade guilds. The Grand Hall was filled with music and warmth. Lily sat beside Kaeldar, feeling out of place at first, but his reassuring nod gave her courage. As the evening went on, Kaeldar stood to speak. The hall fell silent. "Not long ago," he said, "this empire was divided by pride and cruelty. But one act of courage reminded us of what true strength means. A single voice, one human's truth, changed the course of our history." He looked toward Lily. "Tonight, we celebrate not only our unity but the dawn of a new age. May we never forget the price of silence, nor the power of compassion. The hall erupted in applause. Lily lowered her eyes, humbled, but a faint smile touched her lips. For the first time in her life, she felt seen not as a servant but as someone who mattered. After the feast, as the stars glittered above the city, Kaeldar and Lily stood on a balcony overlooking Draconis Prime. The lights below shimmered like fireflies. "You've given my people hope," Kaeldar said quietly. Lily shook her head. "You gave them change. I only told the truth." He turned to her, his golden eyes soft in the moonlight. "Truth is the root of all change. Never forget that." A gentle breeze moved between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was peaceful, full of understanding. Far below, the sounds of laughter and music drifted through the night. The empire of dragons and humans had begun to heal, and with it, the hearts of its people. And high above, beneath the endless stars, a dragon emperor and a once-broken maid stood side by side, watching the future they had built together begin to rise. Years passed, and the empire of Draconis Prime entered an age of peace unlike any before. The scars of the old ways slowly faded, replaced by trust and cooperation. Dragons and humans worked together to rebuild cities, grow knowledge, and explore the stars beyond their world. The name of Emperor Kaeldar became known not only as a ruler of dragons but as the founder of unity. In the royal archives, stories were written of the time when one human's pain changed the destiny of a kingdom. Many knew the tale, but few truly understood the heart of it. Those who had lived through the years remembered how it all began, with a young maid's courage and an emperor's wrath that turned into compassion. Lily Carter had long since retired from her duties at the palace. She now lived in the outer gardens of the citadel, where the air was quiet and the scent of blossoms filled the wind. She spent her days teaching children, both human and dragonborn, about fairness, kindness, and truth. To them, she was not just a teacher. She was a living legend. One afternoon, as she sat beneath the golden trees, a visitor arrived. Kaeldar, older now but still strong, approached her slowly. His steps were steady, his presence as commanding as ever, though his expression held warmth. "Lily," he greeted softly. She smiled when she saw him. "My emperor, you honor me with your visit." He chuckled. "You've called me Kael before. You need not stop now." She gestured for him to sit beside her on the bench. "I wondered when you'd come. It's been too long." "I've been traveling," he said, looking out across the gardens. "There are new colonies forming on the outer moons. Humans and dragons working together. It's more beautiful than I ever imagined." Lily's eyes brightened. "Then your dream came true." "Our dream," he corrected. "You helped shape it." They sat in silence for a while, watching children run past, laughing, chasing one another, their wings and feet moving in harmony. It was a sight neither of them would ever grow tired of. Kaeldar turned to her. "Do you ever regret it? Staying here, giving your life to this place?" Lily shook her head gently. "No, I was broken once, Kael. This place healed me. These people healed me. You healed me. How could I regret that?" He smiled, though there was a trace of sadness in his eyes. "You gave me more than I gave you. You showed me what it means to rule not through fear, but through heart." The sunlight caught on his golden eyes, soft and calm. "There will come a day when I am gone," he said, "when someone else sits on the throne. But I want them to remember your name as much as mine." Lily looked down, touched. "Names fade with time. What matters is what we leave behind." Kaeldar nodded. "Then let our legacy be light." He rose, and for a moment, he looked less like a ruler and more like an old friend. "Goodbye, Lily Carter." She smiled softly. "Goodbye, Kaeldar." As he walked away through the golden trees, the wind carried the scent of flowers and the echo of laughter. Lily watched until he disappeared beyond the garden gates. She closed her eyes and listened to the sound of peace that filled the air. That night, as the stars shone bright over Draconis Prime, the Emperor stood at his balcony, looking over the city that had grown under his reign. In the distance, The lights of human and dragon ships glowed as they prepared for journeys beyond the sky. Kaeldar whispered to the wind, "May the fire of compassion never fade." Far below, in the quiet gardens, Lily Carter looked to the same stars and whispered, "And may its light guide us always." Two voices, one promise, carried together into eternity, as the empire of dragons and humans lived on in harmony, bound forever by the legacy of fire and light.